The essence of the question about the purpose of business is one that's asking what's the right way to run a business. In terms of ethical language, we'd say, is this business being run in a just manner? And by that we mean, is it being run in a morally right, fair and defensible way? Now, justice itself can actually have several dimensions. We could talk about procedural justice, whether the rules and regulations and policies are applied appropriately within an organisation. We could talk about corrective justice, whether those who've been harmed by the corporation have been adequately compensated and those who made the decision appropriately punished. Or we could talk about distributive justice, which is who bears the costs and who gets the benefits of the work of the organisation, of the resources and the work and the outcomes that come out of organisational life. And that's the one that we're going to concentrate on, because the major decisions around the purpose of an organisation are essentially who is bearing the cost? Is it the stakeholders, etc.? Is the environment bearing a cost? Is the local community or the workers bearing a cost that they shouldn't have to bear? And or who should get the benefits? How do we distribute the profit, or how do we distribute the resources of the organisation among these different parties? And so really the core question that we have to deal with is one of distributive justice. Not that those other questions aren't important, it's just unfortunately we don't have another whole subject to deal with them. So let's look at this idea of distributive justice. So even within the single term of distributive justice, we'll find that there are different ways about judging whether a specific pattern of distribution is morally right or not. Consider these four terms. Something can be considered just if we apply the same rules to the distribution. Or justice might mean that everyone gets exactly the same amount. Or justice might mean that we give more to those who contribute to more. Or justice might mean that we give the bare minimum to those who need it. For instance, we respect the basic needs of some. And here we have a little microcosm of this problem. Imagine you go out to dinner with your friends and the restaurant delivers the bill. So you know that there's a big bill for the 6 of you, and the question becomes, how are you going to pay? So is it that you're actually just going to split it 6 ways? I go out with some friends, that's exactly how we do it. Do you split it based on what people actually ate and drank? Do they have to pay based upon desserts? Or do you have a friend who might not actually be employed, and so that person should be able to come out and have dinner, so let's respect their basic needs. They can't afford to pay, so your friend who doesn't have a job pays 0 and everyone else pays the bill. So I think that helps us understand that there are different ways of judging whether the distribution of benefits and costs are done appropriately, are done justly, and we often don't agree. That's not to say that there aren't some societal expectations around some of the dimensions for specific problems. For instance, in most family situations, if you have a cake, then justice would suggest that the kids each get an equal slice of the cake. You don't give a piece of cake to the kid you like the most or who did best at their homework, etc. Now, some families might actually use some version of splitting things by desserts, but most families say, part of the family, we all get the same. In contrast, if you're at university, you don't say, well, everyone should get exactly the same grade. You don't use equality in terms of distributing the grades. You would actually say it should come from desserts. Who are those who deserve it? Who are those who perform the best is the way we do it. And that would be the general expectation. So we have this strange situation at which there is no one way to judge whether things have been distributed justly. We can have people disagreeing about what a just distribution looks like, and all of them are quite defensible. Then we add on top of that a layer of societal expectation around particular problems, as I've gone through the family and the grading context. And it's into this mix of uncertainty that the problem of distributing burdens and benefits in the corporation becomes highly contestable. To help us think through this contestability, we're going to look at three basic theories or frameworks that try and give us some guidance on what is a just way to distribute benefits and burdens. Now, these aren't necessarily just about organisations, but they're three key ethical theories that have been developed around this problem that still have a lot of influence on society. Utilitarianism, a libertarian approach through Brian Nozick's approach, and then Rawls's approach. And we're going to do each of those in turn. And the first of these, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on because you should be familiar with it. But in essence, utilitarianism argues that the most just way to distribute benefits and burdens is the way that maximises the total utility for society. So firms should pursue a social purpose if it increases net utility in society, and it should refrain from those social purposes as the total utility in society. Now note, an implication for business is that this might actually justify ethically harm to some particular groups. It might justify, for instance, monopoly gouging if those profits are then used to increase net utility. So what we have is this possibility again of the oppression of the minority occurring under the utilitarian approach. In addition, we have all of those problems of utilitarianism we discussed back in Module 2. How do you measure utility? How do you identify who's affected? Is it really just arbitrary numbers that we're dealing with? Having said that, it is a good way to think about the problem. One way to think about it is, how are we distributing it? And is it making society better off, or is it making society worse off? One way of thinking about a just way of distributing benefits and burdens when we have to make decisions. In the next video, we're going to move on from this utilitarian approach to a quite different approach, a libertarian approach outlined by Nozick, based upon the early work of Locke and other well-known moral philosophers.